Good morning. This is the Friday Fireside, and we are here with Allyson Dietz. Allyson, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Ray?
We are doing very well. Allyson is the Director of Product Marketing from Neustar, and you're in Chicago right now, and you just got the snowstorm that we're about to get, right?
Yes, we have lots and lots of snow, mountains of snow.
You're in Chicago. You're supposed to get snow. That's what you're supposed to do.
I know. But we've had a really mild winter, so we've been really lucky. And this, if I'll take one big snow in February, that doesn't sound too bad.
No, it doesn't sound too bad. Besides, it's kind of pretty and until
Before
it
it gets
melts
nasty.
and it gets nasty. All right. So anyway, Allyson Dietz, how did you come here? What do you do? And then we'll talk about Neustar. But let's talk about you first. You're a Nielsen type.
I was. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, so a long time. I think a long time. I know there's a lot more veterans than me out there, but I started at Nielsen, and I spent most of my career there. Actually, I worked across a lot of different industries and categories and parts of Nielsen. So I've seen a lot within that organization. And then I left and I actually went over to a company called Numerator, which is a small sort of data SaaS-based startup that focuses on consumer insights. And then I went from there to Neustar. And at Neustar, I'm running product marketing for our analytics business. So I've been kind of all over data, marketing, analytics over the last 20 years or so.
So tell us broadly what Neustar does, and then more specifically what it does in the television and media and entertainment side of the world, which is where I am.
Yes. What's interesting to you? Well, as a start, Neustar is actually a pretty big organization. We're an information services and technology company. And we're really actually known primarily for our identity solutions. And we work across lots of different parts of that space, marketing, risk, communications, and security. But obviously, what that really means is that we really try and hook up companies and people at the moments that matter most. So using identity to sort of make that connection. And within the marketing space, we help brands identify their customers, leaning on that identity asset. We help them reach those customers, and then we measure the impact of their marketing spend. And that's really, the part that I focus on is the measuring the impact. And so our marketing analytics solution, it measures all of the different media spend that marketers invest in, all of their different marketing investments. And that obviously includes television. So our television really becomes a big focus as part of our measurement tools, to helping brands to figure out how they should invest those dollars and what role TV should play in those investments.
All right. So now are we talking linear TV, on-demand TV, digital TV? How do you define television?
So all of the above.
Okay.
So one of the things that we've done in the last year is we actually announced a partnership with Icebot. And so in particular, the Icebot partnership allows us to take linear TV and that data that we get from Icebot and feed that into our analytics tools. So, we've always been able to measure things like connected TV, things that are delivered digitally. But now we're able to also measure linear TV at the consumer level. So we can say, for example, a user might have been exposed to an ad on Facebook. A user might have been exposed to an ad on their mobile device, and then they might have seen an ad on a linear TV program. We can see all of those different touch points and stitch them together. So you get a unified, total view, holistic view of that consumer journey, and figure out whether or not then that ultimately leads them to make a purchase.
Okay, so let's try an example. I live in the country. I'm on a little farm, and I drive a pickup truck. I'm a Toyota guy. I like Toyota Tacomas because I don't have to replace them, but once every 20 years.
20 years.
So if I see, let's make it easy. If I see a Toyota ad on Facebook, and then I see a Toyota ad pop over to me on my Sony digital TV. I have to see what the brand is. No, but we'll do Vizio. They're easier. On my Vizio TV, and then I see a Toyota Tacoma ad on Lester Holt's NBC Nightly News on NBC broadcast that I get over DirecTV. Can you track all of those impressions that I have registered? First of all, have I registered all those impressions somewhere?
It depends. If you're seeing it on your Vizio TV, for example, that's something that we would be able to feed into our data set. Yes.
By the way, they are some of the nicest and smartest and by the way, fastest moving people
Yeah.
in the business. I mean, they're just kind of rocking out there. I got good friends at Vizio. So
Yeah.
anyway, okay. So
Well,
Vizio,
so the Icebot data is a panel. So it's a panel of people. So it's effectively, anybody who's within that panel of TV ad exposure, we would be able to capture that. We actually do then project that out to the total US population using some of our own data assets. We have, demographics, psychographics, those types of things to help expand that data set so that's representative of the US population. And that's, how we make sure that that is, relevant and manipulative as part of our data set.
okay. So how do you know that? Pretty easy to guess that I saw the spot on Facebook because I was logged into Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that it was me that saw the spot on Vizio and not my wife, who certainly influences the decision on the pickup truck,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
how do you know that?
That's a great question. Obviously we're looking in that instance, it would be more at a household level than an individual level. I think that's fair. And so we have to take that into consideration. I mean, ultimately what we're trying to do with the data that we are looking for is we're trying to figure out how that then ultimately leads to a conversion activity. So, does that, to your point, does that then lead you to actually make the purchase of a pickup truck?
Or at least go to the dealership.
Yes.
You
And
tie
it depends
that
on the
together?
KPI.
Do you tie that behavior, me going to a dealership, back to that somehow?
Well, it depends on what the marketer is trying to achieve. I mean, I think I would say most marketers are looking for the ultimate conversion, like purchase. There's different categories that have different things that they look at. For example, pharma may not, a purchase isn't necessarily as relevant in a pharma. It's more about, prescription writing or something along those lines. So it's really about finding the right conversion activity for that marketer. And for that brand. So what's most relevant? What are they trying to achieve as a brand in terms of an outcome? But ultimately, we're looking to optimize those outcomes for brands.
So who are your customers? My favorite question, how do you make money?
Our customers are primarily enterprise clients, so big brands. We focus on, the Ad Age top 100, and so from there, a wide variety as well. But usually, it's brands who have a fair amount of ad spend. Those are usually spending across multiple channels. So TV, for example, it's usually larger brands that are investing in TV, but then also digital, social, print, so on and so forth. We kind of span the gamut across those channels. And so usually we work with big, large brands, large advertisers who then invest in our services. So we would basically build them an analysis and help them with an always-on service to optimize that spend on an ongoing basis.
You're working directly with the brands, or you're working with the big advertising shops?
We're working directly with the brands usually.
Really?
However, we work, hand in hand with the media agencies. They often are a big part of that, equation, and a big partner for us because the brands are looking to them, and they still continue to look to their media agency of record to help to optimize that spend and put those insights back into their planning process.
So the brands have the analytic capability internally to make sense out of all this, right?
Usually, yep.
And then they're working in cooperation with the big advertising holding company and their various and sundry divisions to go execute a plan that they might have created based on the data that you're providing.
Yep, exactly.
But you are not only a before the fact helping map out the plan, but you're a during the campaign analytics as to what's going on, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the digital attribution that we usually talk about.
That's the question I was going to have. What in the world is digital attribution?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's important to understand digital is something that it sort of arose out of the digital world, but with, the Icebot partnership, we're actually able to go beyond just digital and look at things like linear TV. But essentially it's addressable or identifiable advertising. So where you can actually, who's on the other end of that computer, that device, that TV potentially. And we're able to then pull all of those exposures together associated with an individual or household, and then map that to a conversion. So really all that is it's a digital attribution, or now we also call it multi-touch attribution. They essentially means we take all of the different touch points along a customer's journey, we stitch them together, and we look at whether or not that drives an outcome for the brand.
Okay, so I'm the multi-touch if I hit Facebook and Vizio and this and that and the other.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. So we came into 2020 expecting to have a blockbuster year in all businesses and all those things.
Yeah.
What was your 2020 like?
2020 was a crazy year for all of us. I mean, I personally transitioned from being a working mom to moonlighting as a first grade teacher as well. So I know,
Okay,
I
yeah,
know.
yes, I
So
got
I know it's challenging for everyone. It's been a tough year. And in particular, our clients were really looking to us for advice because early on in the year, a lot happened in 2020 around, changing, particularly if you think about the world of TV, sports were canceled. So we talked about who our clients are. They're big advertisers, big enterprise clients. A lot of them invest in sports. And so all of a sudden they had all these dollars associated with sports and they weren't happening. And so they looked to us and said, where should we shift those dollars? Where should we put our money? Instead of it being in sports, where should we place it? So we can still drive outcomes for the brand. And so we really were in the trenches with them, helping them to figure out whether they should, shift those dollars around. And, to really, understand what they might expect from an impact to the business.
What did you recommend for them to capture anywhere close to the same kind of audience as sports?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. So we had to look at it as a case by case basis. It's not that there was a single, silver bullet, and it really was dependent on where did they typically see the greatest bang for their buck above, outside of TV. So, shifting into digital platforms, potentially, shifting into social. It really just depended on the client.
So one of the things that we saw coming through the late teens was the continued fragmentation of the audience. God knows there's 11 dozen places to watch things and very few ways to find out what to watch, separate issue.
Mhm.
And I think with the increase in usage of video and television over the last 12 months, that's gotten even more insane for you, hasn't it? Just that
Yeah.
many more people watching that many more things in that many more places.
Especially this year, right? I mean, everybody was watching TV. What else were you doing with your time?
Nothing, yes. Trying to figure out what day it was, and if you even knew what day it was, what in the world time is it? And if your power goes out like me, then everything is thrown to hell in a handbasket. But anyway, so yeah, it got really, really, really busy for you. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, so Neustar is really, I mean, we're an expert in what I would call big data. I mentioned already, I've built my career with companies that are experts in big data. I would say Nielsen's also one of those as well. But Neustar in particular, they've been focused on how to manage big data, and in particular, they've been ahead of the game as it relates to privacy preserving techniques, because that's also been a big focus in 2020. Is how do you manage changes in privacy regulation. And so, we've built our business on identity and helping companies make those connections to their customers. So we have to constantly evolve and innovate just to stay ahead of those changes in the industry. So really, I would say it's sort of our bread and butter, and something that we're really, comfortable adjusting and adapting as new challenges come our way.
Cool. So coming out of this pandemic eventually,
Mhm.
what does 2021, 2022 look like for you and for Neustar and for my side of the business and media and entertainment? What does it look like and feel like for you?
I think it's going to be a busy year. I think one of the things that we talked a little bit about is that marketers really had to change and to adapt. And, every marketer I talk to says that they think that those types of the skills that they learned in the last year are going to stay. Being able to take data and insight and be able to turn that into quick decisions, and not always planning so far in advance, and being able to adapt throughout the year. That kind of behavior, that kind of data driven marketing, I think will stay, and that's something that I would expect. Marketers are really happy to have something to lean on so that they feel confident in the decisions that they're making, especially when things come their way that are unexpected. I think that's going to stay, and that'll stick around. As it relates to TV, one of the things that we really help our clients with is optimizing their campaigns and their audiences. So TV has always, particularly linear TV, has always been so focused on targeting women 35 to 44. If you listen to Mark Pritchard or anyone else, P&G's CMO or anybody else speak as it, I think there's a definite desire to be able to reach audiences that matter for the brand, and seeing that change. I think having data and tools in their toolkit to help them make those decisions about how to optimize for particular audiences. I always give the example. I'm a mom. I'm a young mom. I already mentioned that once. But if you're targeting women,
and every day is a snow day.
35 to 44 with diapers, you you may be wasting a lot of dollars unless you know for sure that on the other end of that, audience is someone who's actually, has a baby who's in diapers.
Right.
And so it's really important for the Huggies brand, for example, to know that they're reaching second-time moms or first-time moms or whoever it might be, and whether or not, certain ads are driving better conversion for those particular audiences. So I think that kind of audience optimization is going to stick around. I think will continue to evolve in the TV world because, marketers are becoming more savvy and they're looking for the ways to, to make sure that their investments are hitting the right individuals.
Interesting. All right. So I'm gonna go off script here a little bit. My guest next week is Christy Tanner. She runs CBS News Digital. Okay. Which is the streaming service of all the CBS national and international news feeds plus selected local news feeds.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we're going to talk about is trust.
Mm-hmm.
Do you watch broadcast television in Chicago?
I do.
Okay.
I have to
Watch
admit,
local?
I'm a little bit of a cord cutter though.
Okay, but do you ever do you watch local news?
I do, yeah. Especially right now, we're undergoing a lot with our teachers union and our public schools are at it, and so you kind of have to stay up to date on what's going on. Otherwise, you don't know if
All right. So
your kids are going to school the next day.
especially now is an important thing, and I think we are coming out of a year where you could say especially now. So one of the conversations, and this kind of plays into the context of what people are watching. I would argue that someone who's watching the local news at 6 or 6:30, okay, is different than somebody who's watching Survivor, right, in prime time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different environment. They're paying more attention. Arguably, an advertiser might be more interested in the Survivor audience because it might be larger, but might be interested more in the engagement of the viewer of the local news. Does what Neustar does dig down into those kinds of issues about not just am I watching, but what am I watching, maybe, and a little bit about why am I watching? Does that even play into your mix?
Yeah, the why is hard to capture unless you're collecting, survey data.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So, and we're not capturing that inherently as part of our approach, but if a marketer is capturing that, that's something that we might, look into alongside the work that we're doing. I would say that, one of the things and we are inherently capturing some of that because if you are naturally more engaged in a particular program, you're more likely to convert. You're more likely to actually see the ad, engage with the ad, and then therefore make a purchase or convert in some way. So I think you're inherently capturing that because you're seeing if this programming content is driving more conversion than another piece of programming content. So yeah, we can get down to the programming content level and figure out if it's local versus local news programming versus Survivor, and figure out which of those things are driving the best outcome for the brand. And they might learn. And the thing is that that's why it's important to keep an eye on things because it could change. Like you said, last year. Nobody would have said at the beginning of the year that local news was going to do well, but
it's done exceedingly well.
It's done very well this past year.
I have a lot of friends at Sinclair Broadcasting who are right down the street. We have different politics. We don't talk about that, but boy, they got a lot of TV stations. And we pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And news is where these guys tend to make a lot of their nut every year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? We've about run out of time, and we've even managed to put in a transition to the next Friday Fireside. Thank you for doing that. Allyson Dietz, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate that. This will air on Friday, and I will just tell everybody out there, be nice to each other.